Welcome to the 30 on Thursday webinar series. My name is Emily Hendershot and I serve as .orgCommunity's Managing Director. .orgCommunity is a vibrant network of association executives dedicating to shaping the future of associations. Through innovative events and peer-to-peer counsel, .orgCommunity supports executives in developing their leadership skills and advancing the business goals of the organizations they serve. Our next full-day event is Solutions Day, happening on September 19th in Schaumburg. You can earn 5.5 CAE credits by attending. The future is now, and the solutions are there. We hope you'll join us. At the end of the webinar today, you'll receive both your CAE certificate for the webinar and a replay. You can respond to that email to connect directly with me to learn more about membership, to join our inner circle, and about the event. Have 30 more minutes? In October, we have two separate webinars that are happening. The first is October 3rd, and the second is October 10th. We hope you'll join us for both. Today's is Blended Data, the key to member engagement scoring, and we have two really great speakers who are joining us. The first is Rob Miller, and the second is Brandon Loishin. Rob Miller is a CAE who many of you may know as both a senior association executive at the trade association 340B Health and as president and co-founder of Avectra, the company that invented the modern web-based AMS with the launch of NetForum. Brandon is a subject matter expert who has been focusing on associations and analytics since 2010. He discusses data analytics with member industry professionals every single day. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Rob. Thanks to you both for joining us.
Well, thank you, Emily. That was very nice. And I did want to provide a special shout out to the entire orgCommunity team. In fact, in 2018 and 2017, I was sitting on webinars just like this one, gathering up CAE credits. And I'd like to thank the orgCommunity team for helping me achieve my CAE, which I think many of us want and has been very valuable to me. So I think the orgCommunity provides a wonderful service to the entire industry, and so I just wanted to thank them. So we're here today to talk about data analytics and member engagement. And our philosophy at Gravitate is data analytics for everyone. And what we mean by that is that we want the most junior membership coordinator all the way up to the executives to be able to comfortably use the system. And so we put a lot of time into the development of our product to make it easy for everyone to use. We don't want or need the requirement for the IT department involved. They can be involved and we certainly welcome them, but we want everyone on the team to be able to get the reports and data that they want without having to go to the IT department. And that was very important for me when I was the senior vice president at 340B Health, where we were using the Nucleus program. I saw that my staff were able to use it with little to no training, and I think as a result of that, it was very successful. As I said, I was at 340B Health for 3 years, and my job was membership, business development, operations, so I had a fairly large responsibility, and I was working for this great trade association where we supported 1,400 hospital members. We had, as you can see, about 7,500 individuals that we worked with, so we had a really nice sized team. And like all organizations, we wanted to grow our business, provide better service to our membership. And one of the ways that we thought would really help us was to grow the engagement. So let's talk about, the challenges that 340B had. So first of all, it was dealing with engagement. And we saw engagement as a number of things. So we wanted to increase member retention. We wanted to accelerate our member acquisition. We wanted to grow our conferences and event participation, improve our GR effectiveness. Now, these were all things that, are great goals to have, great challenges, but coming up with effective means to do that, as we all know, is challenging. So we were looking for ways to make that possible. So we had to come up with an approach, and our approach was that we believed trying to increase member engagement would help with all of those particular challenges. And so, in thinking about that, we had to consider what our options were, and we did learn that there were products out on the market that could help us. But we also needed to first determine what our relative sources were. So obviously we had an AMS system and a number of other systems. We wanted to really look at that and determine, what data in there really mattered. Then we had to devise a methodology to track engagement. We needed to score the activities across all these different solutions, and we needed to also do something called decay or terming out certain activities, and I'll get a little more into that. And then ultimately we had to identify a data analytics platform to help us. And again, one of our focuses was to try to find a system that did not require a lot of IT support. As an organization with only 30 staff, we only had a couple people in our IT department, so putting another project on their plate was not what we wanted, but more importantly, we wanted the business users to be able to be effective without much of their support. So a couple of other things we were really interested in is that we also wanted a system that had price stability. We wanted all of our members, or all of our staff members, to be able to use the product. We had some interest in possibly allowing our board members. We had some very involved committees, so we were potentially interested in having them access the system. We also wanted to allow our members themselves to be able to touch the data. One of the things I'll talk about later is a member engagement score, and we wanted them to be able to see that when they logged into the website or went to our mobile app. And so we were interested in being able to provide that and not have to be acquiring licenses for them to be able to access that data. We certainly wanted the system for our staff to be accessible from anywhere at any time. We wanted it to be fully responsive so they could be running it on their phone. In fact, when I went to our annual conferences, it was quite valuable for me to be able to be looking at the data through the analytics platform, so I could answer that question that I got over and over and over again, which was, how many registrants do we have? We also wanted a system that would allow for the system to help facilitate the next step. And what I mean by that is that we wanted the system, when you actually went in and did analytics and you studied the data, that once you narrowed it down to maybe a subset of people you were interested in, that it would help facilitate what you do next in terms of further energizing their engagement. So those were some other things we were considering when we were looking at platforms. So let's talk a little bit about what we had to learn to be successful. The first thing is we had to, and I alluded to this before, was we really had to look at the systems that we had at our organization and determine which ones we really felt tracked engagement. And clearly your AMS or your CRM system is going to have that, but you have to look at other systems that you have where your members are engaging with you, whether it's your website, through your email, maybe your community, your survey tools. So we had to look at all that. We also had to make sure that our data was clean. It's a challenge if you got data problems all over the place. But even a part of that is did we have means of connecting the data from one system to another? Were we sharing the member ID to our email system, or did we have to use the email address as a connector? So those were things that we were looking at, and that really rolls into the next one, which is blended data. So we needed to learn that one of the keys to engagement is that not all of your activity is taking place in your AMS. In fact, we wrote a blog not that long ago based on some research we did in our data with our clients, is that really only 20% of most associations' data resides in their AMS or CRM system. In fact, at 340B Health, it was down around 7%. That's because the amount of volume of data that's happening in your email marketing tools, your community tools, that activity is going on continuously, and it's growing at a much faster pace than the data in your AMS. So we wanted to take in that all into account, and so we had to really understand that by blending the data together, you had additional value. The last thing we really had to learn was about engagement scoring and decaying. So we had to learn how to score the different activities that an organization would track to ensure that you are giving them the appropriate amount of credit to a particular activity that was going on. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. So, as I said, the first thing was determining what systems to use to track your engagement. And so for us at 340B Health, we decided phase one would be our association management system, which was IMAS, our Inform system, which is our email marketing, and then our Higher Logic online private community. And that was really the first step, and that was what we executed and had a great deal of success with. And then phase two that we're actually working on with 340B Health now is going on to other systems, including publicly available data. We have a research team. We had a research team at 340B Health, and they were very interested in hospital data that was being collected by Medicare and Medicaid, which of course they make publicly available. And by blending that in with all of our other data, they could do some real interesting things from a research perspective. So that's really the next phase of the project. But certainly we needed to prioritize. We couldn't do it all at once. We wanted to get to a place where we were having success for the executive team early on. And so we took a bite-sized piece, which was those three systems, and I would recommend you consider starting in a similar fashion. I mentioned clean data. First thing is that we created a team of data stewards. It was basically a team that met once a quarter that had some representation of various parts of the department, including IT in this case. And they would come up with projects where they identified data problems and they would go and fix them. Examples would be as data that's coming in on your website where your members will create. They won't take the time to try and log in because maybe they forgot their password. They'll create a new record, and lo and behold, now you have some bad duplicate data. And that just is stuff that happens all the time for everybody, and you just have to clean it up. So we would prioritize what needed to be done on a quarterly basis and take care of these things. As I mentioned, we wanted to make sure we had a common ID across a lot of our systems so we could blend the data together. And then, of course, is doing it consistently, which is why we did it quarterly to make sure it wasn't one mound of work to do at the end of the year. Let me talk about blending now. I've been using that term over and over again, but I wanted people to understand exactly what I mean. So we would take the data, and of course, 340B Health, it was three systems. It was the association management, the e-marketing, social. But I just gave you an example of maybe a fourth system, which is survey. And this is kind of a silly example because I've only got one column in data from these three different systems. But you get the idea that on a logical basis, what we're trying to do is create one really long record of data across all your systems. And when you have that, then the columns from each of those systems become filters you can use to access the data. The other thing that we like to do when we blend data is we like to improve it or make it more capable for the users in the system. For example, it sure is a lot easier if you want to look at the millennials or Generation Z to just pick those categories when you're running an inspection of the data. And so what we like to do is take the data of age, if you're tracking that, create a new column of data in Nucleus called generations so that an individual can just pick one of those and they get access to all those records that fall in that criteria. Same thing with the join date. It's a lot easier when you're looking at your data if you want to go after tenure and just say, listen, I want all the individuals or all the companies that have been members for 0 to 3 years, rather than doing greater than less than on the join date. It just is the type of thing that makes it simpler for that junior coordinator again, or that senior executive who's not regularly in your AMS. So that is the second thing. The last one I want to mention is that we also take more complex topics like membership, where oftentimes to identify someone as a member, we have to make sure that the regular field in the membership table is selected, they've paid, or they're within their grace, or they have an active status. We take all that logic and then we combine it, and then we just create a new column in Nucleus where we mark someone a member or not. So again, when someone's looking at the data, it just makes it a lot easier for them. So how does the scoring and decay work? So what we did is we came up with a methodology where we would give points for every activity that people were having in one of these three systems. So let's start with the easiest thing, which was Informs, our email marketing. We were giving 1 point for an open and 5 points for a click. And then across the higher logic, which was our community, we were giving various levels of points. In this case, 1 for many of these things. But if somebody posts something, we were giving them 5, or they were replying, we were giving them 5. And then within the AMS, or IMAS system, we were giving various levels of points. Maybe for a webinar, you'd give 50 points. As you can see, for our annual conference, we were giving 200 points. Maybe for attending a roundtable, this is a non-paid roundtable, and that would be 100 points. But then there are other things, such as you know, we were as a trade association, we did a lot of advocacy and lobbying. So we really cared about how our members were interacting with members of Congress. So maybe we would give 150 points for calling a member of Congress, maybe 250 points for writing a letter to an editor of a local newspaper supporting the organization. Maybe you'd give points for, you know, a couple hundred points for being on a committee, certainly points for PAC contributions, fundraising activities, that type of thing. So then what happens is the system collects all this data on these individuals, and you start figuring out who your most engaged individuals are. And then, of course, as 340B Health being a trade association, we then grouped that all together and rolled it up to the organization that they worked with, the hospital they worked at. And then at our organization, we also had health systems that rolled up from the hospital. So we had engagement scoring at the individual level, the hospital level, and the health system level. And lo and behold, what they did for us is suddenly we had a great deal of information about the member engagement of our members and non-members, for that matter. And it was quite effective, because what happened is that we immediately knew who our least engaged members were. And those least engaged members are obviously your retention challenges. We also learned who our most engaged non-members were, who clearly are your acquisition targets. We also had a nice surprise. We would be getting a new board member, you know, every year. Somebody would change, and we oftentimes would get about 75 nominations for that. And by using the engagement scoring, we were quickly able to whittle down the board nominees to a small subset that we would further research. But it took a process that usually took about 3 weeks down to 3 days because of all that additional information. So with that, I'm going to start wrapping up my part of this. I do want to mention that that we found that by implementing the engagement and implementing the engagement scoring, we just learned so much about our members, and we watched how activities that we were pushing, whether we were pushing an important webinar, would impact certain segments of that membership, and we could target our marketing at those individuals. So you still have time to see a little bit of this. I'm going to turn this over to Brandon, my colleague, now, and I do want to mention that he is going to be showing 340B's site live, and maybe a couple of other sites. And so it is the kind of speed that you would expect if you were running it, and it is you know, implemented and real solutions to these real challenges. So Brandon, I turn it over to you.
Thanks, Rob. So what I'm really going to try to focus on today, guys, is just showing you some of the visualizations that you know, we helped 340B Health create during the entire process that Rob was just explaining to us. So essentially the way that Nucleus works is you log into it, it's URL, you go and you type in your username and password. We can also hook up with your AMS or something like that to bring in over usernames from a different system if that's something that you want to do. But you know, you log in and the first screen that you're going to see is going to look something like this. And really where I want to start is by explaining the way that engagement scoring for 340B Health is organized within Nucleus. And so the first thing is that the first area, and so what we call carousels are up here in the left-hand side corner of the screen. And basically you'll notice that there are a number of different engagement carousels that 340B Health has. One of them is organization engagement, then we have individual engagement, then we have individual member engagement. And so because 340B Health is kind of in the unique position, or I guess there maybe are some other associations that are out there where they know who all their prospective members are, you know, we were able to bring in data about the prospective members as well. And so when we take a look at organizational engagement, in individual engagement, we're looking at not only members, but also prospective members. And then when we look at individual member engagement down here, we'll be looking at just the individuals who are members of the organization. So from the high level, when we look at organization engagement, and again, keep in mind that there are prospective members who are listed in here too, one of the first things that you'll notice is that we're looking at engagement points over time. And so this is just showing us overall how things are growing, how things are shrinking, how is our member database you know, actually engaging with us. And so this is just one way we're looking at the total here. But we also have other clients who are utilizing engagement scoring where they're looking at an average. So they want to know per client or per member, you know, what is the, you know, the average points of engagement that they have with us. So kind of just two different ways that we're tracking overall engagement for our members. The next thing that you'll see here is the different buckets, or the different buckets that we've created to place members into. So you'll notice that there's a low engagement, medium engagement, high, very high, and then no engagement. And so again, keep in mind that the prospective members are also in here, so that's why we see organizations with no engagement as, you know, this big red bucket here. But you know, if we dive down deeper into any of these visualizations, we'd be able to specify what we want to look at, and we'll see that bucket shrink and the other ones go up if we're looking at just the members. So one thing that this can help you do is that when it becomes time for, you know, when it comes time for renewals or something like that, right, you've got this bucket of people who are in no engagement or low engagement that now you can pull from and start trying to, you know, talk about the benefits that you're offering towards them in hopes of getting them to renew. So you've got a warning sign of, you know, lowly engaged members. The next thing that you'll see here is average engagement by top 5 states, and this is just again by location. Within Nucleus, we do have the ability to do geographic breakdowns based on anything that you might want to divide by. So here we're looking at state, we could do country, we can do county, we could do congressional district. In fact, 340B Health has a congressional district filter, so we'll talk about that in a little bit here too. And then lastly, when we took a look at the engagement top 5, this is just going to show us the top 5, in this case, health systems that are you know, engaged with this particular organization. Now, where I want to go is I'm actually going to dive down deeper into this engagement levels by org count. And so what this will allow me to do, and it's just going to pop up here in just a second, is start to identify and filter by other criteria over here on the right-hand side of the screen. So for instance, you'll see that congressional district, where if I had, you know, somebody, you know, or I'm doing some advocacy in a particular congressional district, and I want to find a member who's highly engaged in there and maybe ask them to do something, you know, for us in that district. Right, I can go ahead and just pop up my filters here, select who that, you know, what the congressional district that I need, and then down at the bottom of the screen, I can actually access the data table that allows me to see who are the members that are engaged in that particular congressional district. So for instance, if it was congressional district NY12, now I'm looking at, so I can filter and sort this guy down here at the bottom. So now I can look at either the least engaged members, or if I want to look at the most engaged, I can flip it the other way. And so now if I'm looking in congressional district 12 and I want to find the highest engaged person, you know, I can see that it's NYU, I think it's Langone Hospitals, if I move this over here. So that, you know, that's just one way that you can go about identifying members who are highly engaged or lowly engaged. And the opposite of that is that, you know, I think this is actually a true story of something that happened on Rob's team, is that they had a junior membership coordinator who decided that she was going to go ahead and start reaching out to the members who had low engagement in particular regions and in particular areas based on the filters that she was applying over here on the right-hand side of the screen. So she very quickly and easily identified her targets in order to start talking to those people. The other thing that you can do is that when we're looking at the member type or the member status over here on the right-hand side of the screen, this is where we're going to see those members or prospective members. And this comes into play when we're, again, taking a look at that total engagement points that is happening over here on the left-hand side of the screen. And so if I apply the prospective member, I can then very quickly and easily find members who aren't, find prospective members who aren't members yet but have engagement with the organization. So again, gives us a very quick and easy list to target. So the other thing that I want to point out here too is that if we look at this organizational points by activity, it'll take just a second for it to load up here, but what it's going to show me is actually all the individual activities that are taking place. So not only can I look at it from an aggregate, but I can also dive down deeper into, I want to see each of the individual activities that are happening. I can start doing things like comparing people who are in engagement levels. Like if I wanted to find out from, who's in the low level and what have the people in the medium level done that the low level people haven't. And then maybe I can start identifying, well, this hospital is interested in this, and then they, engage when I talked about this, so I can start, figuring out types of content to apply to different groups or different segments of my membership. The last thing that I want to talk about is the example that Rob mentioned a little bit earlier, where they use their engagement scoring to help them identify a new board member. And so when I look at my individual engagement here, again, you're going to notice, because these are all the actual members that are a part of the organization, that no engagement bucket has shrunk here and it's smaller. But one of the things that Rob's organization utilized this for was for finding, I guess when they have a call for board members, they typically have around 75 people apply or put their name into the hat to become that particular board member. And so what they were able to do is use the engagement scoring here with the Nucleus. And if we look at this, top 5 engaged, it's going to give us a list of the members who are engaged most frequently and have the most points. And so when it pops up here, what they were able to do is automatically just apply a filter to find those people that had applied for this, open board seat, and just kind of only take the top 10%, the most highly engaged members who had applied for that, or been nominated for that. So, that was one of the things that they were able to do that would have taken them weeks to go ahead and find out and research how engaged all these people actually are with the organization beforehand.
Thank you, Brandon. I see we still have a little time for some questions, so we'll get to those. But before I do, I wanted to make sure that you knew that I will be attending the Org Community Solutions Day on September 19th, both as a sponsor and a speaker. And I'll be speaking on engagement and member-facing analytics. So if you'd like to learn more about, first of all, about engagement or about member-facing analytics, please stop by and come to that presentation, come to the whole event, but please stop by and say hello to me, because I would like to talk to you about any analytics challenges or goals that you have. So on to the first question. I have a question here that says, how did you determine what score to give each activity? This is a great question, and quite frankly, the answer is we guessed. And the way we guessed is we determined what we thought the relative value of things were. Certainly, we thought the value of an email was very low as compared to what was our most valuable thing, which is somebody calling a member of Congress. So we essentially arrayed all of the rest of our activities between a score of 1 for an email all the way to a score of 500 for calling that member of Congress. So. And then what we did is at the end of the first year, we evaluated the success of that, and then we made some minor modifications to the scoring because the solution handled that. So my recommendation to you is to just give it your best shot. Make sure you have key people in the office to debate it, but then march ahead. The second question is on blending. The questioner asks, we have a great many systems. What are the factors or considerations when connecting them? I think the biggest factor first is go with the systems that you believe your members, your non-members are having the most interaction with, because that's where the real activity happens. And then certainly for a phase 1, pick the ones where you have the ability to easily connect the systems. So if you have your ID from your AMS in your email marketing tool or your maybe a community tool, those are great ones to start with, or if you can connect through email address. If you don't have those connections yet, then I would say that for those, you have to work on that before you consider bringing them into being blended. The third question is how long does it take to implement an analytics platform? Well, I'm sure that's different from any solution that you're dealing with, but at Gravitate, it takes us about 6 weeks to implement production-ready software that can really start helping organizations analyze their data. And that includes, blending, connecting the systems, blending them together, and then building out the visualizations. What, of course, helps us is we have an entire set of baseline visualizations that we start with, and so we're not starting from scratch. We're starting from that 95% range, and then we work with you to make sure that we have visualizations that perfectly match what you need.
Well, thanks, Rob. I'm sorry to have to stop you, but we are at time for today. There are a couple additional questions that came in through the chat. So if you are one of the people who asked those, either Rob, Brandon, or someone from the Gravitate team will follow up with you directly afterwards. Thanks again to both of our speakers, Rob and Brandon, for joining us. And to all of you, we look forward to connecting with you in the next webinar. Have a great day.